Word. All right. Okay, I
Mm,
think we are live here. We have Hannah Lou of Cold Beat. Super excited to have her on a Raw Power Zoom. How are you doing, Hannah?
I'm doing good. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And she is in Richmond area in San Francisco, kind of that general vicinity. I know the band's really popular up there too. And so I'm just going to go into some questions that I prepared. I found you guys, first of all, I found you guys on Spotify. Somehow you got into my algorithm. I started listening, and then I said, okay, I'm going to take a deeper dive. And as I started listening to the albums, I created my own playlist and favorites and so forth. And I thought this would be an interesting interview because you've certainly had an interesting career already at such a young age. So, first thing I wanted to ask you is that Cold Beat has such a distinctive visual and sonic aesthetic. And when you begin a new project, what comes first for you, the imagery or the music?
Well, I guess I would say it's somewhat hand in hand because a lot of the time when I'm writing, I kind of use dream logic and just kind of worlds start kind of building. So I often have imagery in mind while I'm kind of working on music. It's just sort of like a world kind of starts just building, and it's often there's like books or movies or sometimes even conversations, just all kinds of subconscious stuff built in. So there's often a lot of visuals that come along with that. And I've had I've worked with a lot of really cool people making videos and actually bringing some of those things to life. And so I feel really lucky that I've gotten to express myself in that way, um, kind of explaining more about the music through the visuals.
That's great. You know what? I realized I left a speaker on. Do you hear echo? I left.
No.
Let me turn
Oh,
off a speaker. I think I'll get cleaner sound. One moment. It's right here.
okay.
Yeah. Okay. This will probably turn out better for the video. Hopefully. Can you still hear me? All right.
Hmm.
Okay. Great. Let me turn it up. Okay. So your work blends analog warmth with futuristic themes. At least it seems like to me. And I'm wondering what draws you to that intersection of nostalgia and forward momentum.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that I guess I'm a person that's always thinking about the future, whether I like it or not. Like my goal, like anyone's goal, is to be in the moment. And I think that when I'm actually playing music is one of the rare times when I'm fully in the moment. Um, but a lot of the time when I'm working on things, I am thinking about the future or ruminating on the past, even though I don't want to be someone that ruminates on the past. It's just, I think writing lyrics and writing music is sort of partially a therapeutic process in that way. Um, but I do like sounds from the past, and I think specific synthesizers and guitar tones are sort of like this language that nods to things that help me convey a message. But I also don't feel very locked down to any one genre or sound. In terms of like when I'm thinking about music, I don't have like an idea in mind, like, oh, I want to make this sound like this. And I think my whole life, my whole career as a musician, I've been lumped into things that I'm constantly like, no, that's they don't get me, and I think maybe a lot of people feel like that, like sometimes misunderstood. But I think it's just like if you have synthesizers at all in your music, you get really lumped in with dark wave, and like if you have tendencies towards, I don't want to say negativity, but like a lot of my songs are kind of like dystopian, I guess. Um, I I guess I get yeah. I think sometimes it's like, oh, throwback sound, but I'm not necessarily trying to sound like things of the past. It's just like kind of like music I listened to when I was a kid, is a big part of my like origin, like my language, my palette.
Cool.
Um, yeah.
Cool. You've said before that you approach music and visual arts with a similar mindset. So, how does your background in film and visual art shape the way you're composing cold beat songs?
Well, I actually had a really trippy experience just a couple weeks ago where I'm gonna try to make this long story short because I don't want to take up the whole interview, but basically, like, I had a dream over a decade ago, and it was sort of like about expressing yourself correctly and making art that truly explains your viewpoint and connects you to other people through that. It's really hard to explain the dream, but basically, I just shot a music video with a friend for a song that I wrote about the dream. And in the video, we reenacted the dream. So it's all, dream logic. It doesn't completely make sense, but during the filming of the video, I was using some props that I realized uh they're photos that I took when I was like 15 that I've had for a long time. And in using the props in the video, I realized things about the dream because it was the actual stuff I had used. So it was all connected and it was extremely trippy. But I think if you lean more on dream logic and sort of not conforming to certain narratives or tropes, you kind of land on magic things like that all the time because you're sort of moving through the world, just being curious and paying attention to things instead of attaching narratives that are too didactic. And I think that that ends up happening with my songwriting and my video making because they're both forms of storytelling. And I think especially right now in like 2025, in our world right now, everything's just so awful that like, and there's so much like weird logic, like, and aesthetics about like why war should happen and why people should be, just horrible stuff going on. And I think the only way I can really exist right now is to reject that logic by working in a more dream logic kind of way, sort of like the Dada movement and their response to World War One, being making stuff that was sort of ridiculous or making things that were like, because it's like, yeah, we're not gonna adhere to this logic. These times are crazy. So I think that's just kind of how I operate. And I often find meaning in stuff that I make later because I don't even understand it at the time. I'm just sort of available as a channel. And then as long as I'm curious and I maintain curiosity, then it sort of what I make makes sense in some way later or in the moment if I'm lucky.
Yeah, it's a crazy world right now. I gravitate towards a lot of artists who are touching on current events and things and oh, just, where the songs just contain a lot of meaning, not people not writing a bunch of love songs and coming so from some depth. And I felt your music had a lot of depth to it and the lyrics and everything about it. So really listenable. I can sit. I've played you guys all day today, actually. So and
Thank
and
you
it,
so
and it feels
much.
great, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that too, like, I think what I've noticed about my own meaning in my songs is that a lot of my songs sound like love songs, but it's like you think it's about sex, but it's actually about death. Like if you pay close enough attention, you're like, oh, this is actually not a love song, but it's sort of masking as that because that's a language that people understand. Like, I mean, people listen to music to understand how they're feeling about things and to understand their world. So if you make things that are more universal and people can attach their own feelings, whatever they're going through, um, then they'll be able to, understand and feel your music more and connect with it more. And that's the point. Because no one's gonna know exactly how someone else feels. No one's in love with the same person you're in love with. No one has grief like you. It's like, like, and I think that the things going on in the world, it's like it's inescapable, just like the grief that we're all feeling because of what's going on just in our time and just like the amount of people in pain. So I think that if like there's one way to write about that, and that's to be, didactic and say exactly what it is. But there's like the other way, which is to be like, what else can we make? Like I almost out of survival feel like I have to create something else besides what is in front of me because it's so horrific. So I think that's kind of where a lot of my practice just comes from is like what else is possible. And I think, I love sci-fi and people that imagine things that resemble our world but are a bit different. I think that's always interesting to me, just like stories that do that. And I think that I do that a lot in my music, but I don't really say things plainly very much because I think I want people to be able to enter on their own and also I don't know. Again, I think the music itself usually if the music's doing a good job, you don't have to say it with the words. My
I
non
love how you move between post-punk, synth pop, dream pop, and experimental textures. And then you've put your lyrics in there and you've got different musical layers to everything. I gravitate in your music, this is just a personal thing. I gravitate more towards those sounds that are post-punk, dream pop, and experimental, that rather than the synth pop. But that's just my own taste. I'm in a whole different generation. And when the techno-y kind of sound started coming out in the 80s, I didn't gravitate that way. Although, I love the Rhythmics. Absolutely. I think it's cool that you did an EP of some of their stuff. And, they're so relevant even today, Annie, just amazing. But also with Grass Widow, there was a real DIY ethos and a community-driven energy. And I'm wondering how that does that spirit carry over into the way you operate Cold Beat today?
Well, I think when Grass Widow was a band, I was very much, it was at a time when I was much more involved with community, like local community, like where I live. I grew up in San Francisco and it just, our city got taken over by tech and then a lot of artists moved away. So, but before that happened, there was a lot of people that, I mean, when Grass Widow was banned, we all lived and worked and practiced within an 8 block radius. So it was just like all my best friends lived within a couple blocks. Like it was just a very special time. And it's just not like that anymore for me. I think about that a lot actually. Like, I don't I don't really have people that I make things with anymore. And it's kind of like a bit sad, but it's also part of maybe my evolution. Like Grass Widow, like we were in our 20s, like we were like so um we were all about doing things together and we were really close. And that was a big part of the music, was just that closeness. And since Grass Widow, I did this band Generation Loss, which was really fun. And that was about, we would all write together in that same kind of way. And that was really awesome. And actually Ron from Crime would like come to all of our shows and like loved our band. And like we had like a moment, it was like really fun to be in a band again, just like kind of like Grass Widow, like with friends and working collaboratively. With Cold Beat, I kind of just like it had a lot of like iterations because it was a band for a decade and it just like had a lot of people involved. In the last few years, it was me, Kyle King, Sean Monahan, and Luciano Talpiaita, and that was the band. And like after those guys kind of moved away and moved on, like I was just like, I don't think I can do a band that's called Cold Beat anymore if those guys aren't in it because it was sort of a glorified solo project at first, but then without them, it just didn't uh, feel like Cold Beat anymore because we had built such community together in that band.
Was
I feel like what I do now is more like global. I don't really even, I'm pretty like reclusive. Like I have friends that I see, but I don't, and I go out to shows, but I don't like when I write music these days, I usually write by myself. And that's changed. I do love the modality of like the way I worked in Grass Widow or Generation Loss, and even at moments in Cold Beat. But actually just recorded a Hannah Lou record for the first time ever. I'm 45 years old and I'm making something under my own name for the first time. And I recorded it myself, and my husband Andrew Kerwin played a lot of guitar on it. And then I brought it to the studio with this woman, Miriam Kudus. She's like she does a band called Space Moth, and she's plays synthesizer in the band La Luz, and she also is a great engineer and producer. And I brought my songs to her, and she helped me flesh them out and finish them and mix them. And then my friend Sarah Register mastered it, and now it's going to be coming out. I think the release date is in March, but March 27th. But it's coming out on Night School Records out of Scotland, and I'm excited. It's like it's pretty honest for where I'm coming from. It's just under my name, and it's like it's just me. I do have people that have been playing in the band with me, and they're all really cool. We have yet to write together and be in that kind of space together, and everyone in the band is in like three other bands. But it's fun, and it's a different kind of fun. It's not like the like being in the band feeling when you're like all in it together and like it's like possible to tour and all that. I don't know what touring looks like yet, but yeah, things have I think that I'm connected to other artists in that like I share like demos with friends that are working on things, and we'll like play things for each other and stuff. But yeah, Grass Widow was like more of like my youth, like writing with people in that way, having so much time, being like, I remember we used to practice for like, I don't know, like 6 hours. Like now band practices are like 2 hours, we used to practice for like, we would just be working it out, just like, and yeah, it's like, I guess I'm in a different place these days.
That's cool.
Maybe it's age, who knows?
Well,
But
that's exciting, really exciting that you've got something coming out soon. And I'm curious as to why you went that direction. It's been what, 4 years since you did a cold beat record, roughly?
yeah,
About
yeah, I
that.
guess
So
about 4 years. And I don't know, the guys in Cold Beat, like my one bandmate Sean, he started this line dancing thing, it's queer line dancing, and it's called Stud Country, and it just really took off. And he just, was real busy doing that. And then my other two bandmates were just like doing some professional stuff where they just like didn't really have the time to do music. And I was just, yeah, I was just kind of like, well, I guess I'll just chill for a while. But then, yeah, when I started writing new music, it just felt like something different. It didn't feel like Cold Beat anymore. And I don't really, I think with Cold Beat too, like I mean, we made it through pandemic. We made a whole record on Zoom, which is crazy to me. Like, and then we played this amazing show at Grace Cathedral in San Francisco. And it was just after playing that show, it was just so epic that it was like really hard to say yes to other shows because it was like, well, where do you go from Grace Cathedral? Like it's kind of like we ascended. Like I don't know. I just felt like that was kind of like it. Like I was like, that's the note I feel like I want to end on. Like it just felt good. But
okay,
we
so
really
kind of
barely played out the last two records because of the world, lockdown and everything. So.
so it sounds like cold beat is kind of have done its thing, and you've kind of put the period on that sentence, and you're moving to a new thing, which is yourself, your own uh, name on the recordings. What should we expect? Can you give us any hint of what direction the music might go in on this compared to what you've been doing?
Mm. Well, I think I think you're gonna like it, Scott, because it sounds like it's leaning towards the side of cold beat that you like.
Cool.
It doesn't sound like a far cry from cold beat. I would say working with Miriam, I got the production to sound much better than what I was able to accomplish sometimes on my own or working remotely with people. So I guess like I don't know, honestly, like I've been sitting with the material for so long now that I don't even know what it sounds like anymore. Um, all I know is I'm excited to share it and just sort of like give it to everyone and not have it be mine anymore. Um,
Well, I'm
because
excited
yeah,
to definitely excited to hear it. That's going to be it has to be it's an interesting position that you were in because you had built something with this band Cold Beat and you have a following. Um, and you're going to move to another direction, and maybe that's the path to go in. Um, it's just so it's an interesting thing, I'm sure. I always thought Cold Beat was pretty much like your band, the way I didn't know the legal structure, but I would have guessed that it was more of a sole proprietor, that you were the person who owned that group, and as far as your other groups prior to that were probably more like partnerships. Is that right? Am I
yeah,
guessing?
yeah, you're correct for sure. And I think that, you know, Cold Beat was basically a glorified solo project. There's a couple of the records that I made pretty much by myself, and then there's a couple that were way more collaborative. So it was a project that was malleable and able to let people in, or I could do it on my own as needed or wanted. But I don't know, something about just right now, maybe where I'm at personally, I was just like, you know what, it's just time to use my name. Like that's what feels the most honest right now, and it's not connected to anything. I mean, Colby, I'm really proud of everything I did with that band. We also had a lot of like really bad timing. Like we put out a record on DFA a week before lockdown. And then like the label switched hands and imploded kind of, and just I don't know, the person we'd been working with wasn't there anymore, and it was this whole thing. And it really, the record just like came out at kind of like maybe one of the worst times a record can come out. And then yeah, I don't know. The timing was just like not really in our favor for the past few years. So I think the music, of course, is going to outlive me, and I'm proud of it. And I'm, yeah, it's work that I stand behind, but also like I'm okay to do something new too. It feels kind of freeing to just do something new. And I think people that know Cold Beat probably know my name, so I won't be coming out of nowhere.
Right. That's true. That's true. Yeah, and so sort of going back to your music, your lyrics often explore memory, connection, emotional distance. When you write, do you begin from a personal space or from conceptual ideas?
I don't really have a rule. It's kind of different every time, but I often write with like a bass line and a vocal line together. Um, and what I'll usually do is I'll try to like lay down drums quickly, and I'll there'll usually be a harmony. So I never really start with one melody. It's always two melodies. Um, it's usually like a bass line, whether that's on a bass guitar or on a bass synthesizer, and then I'll usually layer off of that. But I'm usually thinking about something while I'm writing because I'm kind of working through something, and the meaning tends to lead the music.
Interesting.
But I don't usually have all the words. I'm usually like like kind of like vocalizing, but not making any sense for a while.
Well, it's interesting that you come up with two melody lines sometimes. That's the first I've ever heard something like that. It's very unique. Um, many of your fans have said that your music can be both cold and intimate at the same time. Do you consciously aim for that duality, or does it emerge naturally from your process? This is one of my favorite questions that I came up with. So I'm so curious because
Uh,
I feel that listening to it as well, you know.
Cold and intimate. Well, I think that I
And
I
cold
have a
not in a
big
negative sense, not in a negative sense, but just, like such an opposite feeling in some ways,
yeah. Yeah, I'm chewing on that. I'm thinking if I definitely don't set out to have that sort of dichotomy going on, but I think that when I write, um I'm like, I sort of feel like you can't halfway write a song. You have to fully say what you're saying. So there's an intimacy that's innate because you're bearing all about something. Because it's like, what's the point if you're not? That being said, I think when I write, I hold back. Like, I don't name any names. You know what I mean? Like, I'm kind of like, I guess, a bit protective of myself in my process. So I use a lot of analogy. If the more personal a thing is, the more analogy there may be. Um, if that makes any sense. But I think that music allows me to be fully intimate and maintain a distance at the same time because of using storytelling, I guess. I'm sure a lot of people feel like that, although I'm sure there's also a lot of people that just write things just not even poetically, just like, some Bob Dylan, like this is a song about Sarah kind of thing or something. I don't know who he writes about, but yeah, it's yeah. I think that you want it to be something that feels good to say. So sometimes I have to work on that. And that to me is sort of part of the therapeutic part is like sometimes there'll be something I'm going through, but I'm like, hey, I don't want to get up on stage and be like wah about something. So how can I say that in a way that actually feels good to say or would feel good to hear? So that's kind of an exercise that I go through sometimes.
I was wondering, how often did Cold Beat tour? I never had a chance to see you. I'm actually in Costa Rica right now, and I live in.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
a sort of a digital nomad, so I often go from place to place. Although this is one of my home bases, San Diego is also a home
Amazing.
base. But so I haven't been able to catch your shows. But I'm just wondering, did you guys tour a lot? How was that grind? How was it touring? And um, just
You know,
anything you want to remember about that. And did any of your songs take a new life on stage um, when you toured?
well, songs always take on a new life when you play them for people. And that's why it's so important to play, even though like I've played way less shows in the past 5 years than like I ever have since I first started playing music. Every time I write a song, it's like you don't even know the song until you play it for people because that's it kind of cements itself. With Cold Beat, we didn't tour as much. Like with Grass Widow, we toured a lot because it was just different times. Like Spotify didn't exist. We actually could make money on tour. Like it was, people were coming out more. Like no one, not everyone had like smartphones. And like, I think there's this feeling that people had then that their participation was part of music. And I think nowadays, with more algorithmic and suggestive kind of listening, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm glad that you found me on Spotify. I think that's really cool. But I think in general, like these days, people just don't go out as much as they did. And they don't realize that even going to a show, you're so important. Like if a band's on tour and you go to their show, you're part of making it happen. And that collective moment that's part of music. It is all, even though of course I come from a DIY background, so I am, that is what everything is based on for me, is knowing that people power. Like we would go on tour and just people we go be in the middle of nowhere and all these people would show up and it was awesome. And it was like people could really, there was like different friends that you'd hit up and they would know like who's working at the college radio right now who can get you a good show. But like these days I feel like it's just really expensive to tour. Like even bands I know that are pretty big and successful, they'll go and sell out a whole European tour and still go out of pocket. And it's like it's just getting really difficult. And I think when I was younger, I was more willing to like put things on a credit card and like figure it out. And you know, these days, like I don't know, it just feels like really financially irresponsible. I mean, I would like to play more shows. I would definitely like to play shows outside of the Bay Area. And I think it's really important to bring what you do to another place. And there's still so many local scenes, and local, I think people get this idea that the whole world is super homogenized because of the internet and just like it feels like everyone's doing the same thing everywhere. But it's like, there's still really specific things happening in specific places, and it's really cool for artists to have that intercontinental exposure.
Are you
Um,
planning to tour the new album, or have you even gotten that far with it
I
yet?
haven't gotten that far, but I hope to. I would hope to. Not that interested in touring in the States right now or
Where is
being
your
in the States.
following when you are you able to analyze where your followers are and
I don't know. I don't really, I haven't paid attention to that, but I get the feeling that they're in the UK and in California. And I don't know, I'm guessing right now. I have no idea if I'm being honest. Maybe you can give me some like metrics after this meeting.
I have a good friend, actually. He was one of the original trio that formed Raw Power magazine back in the day, and he's in the UK. He's just outside of London, and
Uh-huh.
he could probably get you into the Cavern Club, or he's got connections there. We can talk
Oh
later.
yeah.
But
Yeah, I well my record is only coming out in Scotland, so I was kind of hoping like, oh, maybe I'll get to tour in the UK. Because it is very appealing to me to go play in the UK because the drives are short and I just love the UK so much. I don't know, something's pulling me there. And then the fact that my record's coming out there feels like it would be fun to tour there. Maybe
I
go to
was
Stonehenge. I don't know.
I was wondering, in your song repertoire, what were the ones that really popped for you live where you just had to have them in the set every night, that these were like the favorites? Like, was there a handful of songs that you felt like these are going to work 90% of the
Um, well, you're talking about like with Cold Beat, it's,
time?
we played so sporadically that it's hard for me to really know, but um I know that people seem to like Prism a lot. That's like a song that people seem to like.
That's on my
Um,
list. Yep.
okay, that's cool. I think of my new songs, like, because right now I've been trying to divine what the singles are. And when I have played live, I've had a few songs that people have been like, whoa, that's the hit. So, like, it's interesting. That's something that happens when you play. You kind of witness how other people feel about the music because when you're writing something, you don't know. I don't know if most artists know what their singles are. Um, I think whatever I'm working on in the moment is my favorite song usually. Um, but yeah, I guess with Cold Beat, I think Prism, what else? 62 Moons, probably. I licensed that song 62 Moons a few times and like to a movie and some TV shows and like when for some reason people just kept wanting that song. So I think that's probably a good sign that
That's
people
cool.
liked it. Um,
Well,
I don't know. It's really hard for me to know. I think if I played out a lot more, I would know better.
sure, sure. Well, I've just got a couple more questions for you here. I appreciate you hanging in this long with me here. Um, but as someone who has navigated multiple eras of the Indian underground music scene, how do you see the current landscape for artists trying to balance artist integrity with the demands of digital culture?
Honestly, I'm pretty freaked out about AI. Um, I'm gonna be real. Like, I have days where I feel extremely depressed about the ways that artists are valued. And it makes me feel down on myself sometimes as an artist when like Spotify, there's something with that band King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. I don't know if you heard about this, but like they took their music off Spotify and then like instantly Spotify made some AI slop band version of them and had song titles that were their song title. It was like really creepy. Like just kind of like, oh, these humans that made songs out of their own minds and hearts, like whatever, that's not what it's about. We're just gonna make some AI version of them. Like, I don't know, stuff like that creeps me out. And like, um, I
Me
think
too.
that there's like a lot of like people are really focused on playlists and Spotify. Like, I don't even have a Spotify account because every time I interface with it, I just get really bummed. I'm just like, what is happening? Like, because like when I was young, like bands like I loved the Breeders and Nirvana and all these bands that were around like when I was 13, 14. You could like CDs were so it was so easy for bands to succeed and have feel like good about themselves. And I feel like these days it's like so hard to like I know a couple people that make a living at music and then a lot of people that don't. And it has nothing to do with the merits of their music. And I think that that's a bit startling. It's like, it's just a little depressing to be like, it doesn't matter how good your music is. You got to be good at marketing or something. And
Yeah.
I'm not, that's not me. Like, I'm not going to do that.
Well,
Um,
let me tell you, I'd just like to share the other side of the coin from my standpoint. And I totally agree with everything you said there. Marketing is just so important. I feel like when you are a legit artist like you are, that it's really worth investing in marketing. And I don't mean just the time and just the money, but in learning about it and just doing everything you can to get your music out there because you've done the work of putting out a really good catalog of music that the people that find you enjoy it. And I am an avid music listener and very picky. And I find your stuff really great. And I'm sure the people that follow you feel the same way. It's really legit stuff. It's really cool. And so marketing has to play a part in that, unfortunately, for better or for worse. And then as far as Spotify goes, there's a lot of reasons not to like Spotify, and then there's a lot of reasons to like it. But back when I was growing up, and I'm in a whole couple generations ahead, right? So I'm quite a bit older. And when I was growing up, it was a whole different scene. But still, if you look at the number of artists that were getting signed to labels, you had to be signed to a major label or forget about it. Back in those days, there were tons of good musicians around, but the ones that had whatever the labels were looking for, they chose who was going to make it in a lot of ways. Now, a lot of times the talent just came through and they picked the right people, obviously, in a lot of situations, but it wasn't an easy time to make it. And the number of artists that were making it were very small. Now, I look at Spotify as a kind of a level playing field to where everybody can get out there and put out their music, right? But from there, you still have to work really hard to get it heard and
yeah,
everything.
I don't know if it is level. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think that people, as far as I understand it, like people like on Spotify, on Instagram, like people pay to have that little check mark. So they look more fancy, verified. It's like they pay like $14 a month to do that. And then it makes them look more fancy. And then on Spotify, you can also buy followers. There's all these things people do like to make their number. There's tricks you can learn with Spotify. I mean, I've heard about this. I have never done any of these things, but you can like create playlists and you put yourself on them and you put other people on them and that there's like all these ways to like there's like a lot of emphasis on engagement, but I guess what it all goes back to for me is that engagement is getting people to engage with their phones more. And it's just like I don't know, it's just like I want to be in a world where people are engaged in real life. Like there's been a lot of talk about Spotify. This woman, Liz Pelly, wrote an amazing book about it, kind of exposing, I don't know if you read her book, but
Yeah.
really interesting and in depth kind of viewpoint. She's super smart and just so much insight. And then there was like recently there was like this whole thing here in Oakland. It was sort of like a symposium about Spotify and what can people do? How is it useful? How is it not useful? And I think I could just keep coming back around to like people being in person is always going to be the best thing and having real life experiences. That's maybe just where I come from, but like I would rather engagement be in that way than like having more followers or something. I think it's kind of passe. It's like it reminds, I don't know, it's like we have other choices. So I guess my emphasis is more there. Of course, like I know that like the thing about music is that it will outlive me and it will, it'll always be around. There's always something to discover. I actually have a small record shop in Oakland. We've been open for 9 years, and I'm constantly discovering new music. Like just when I think like, we'll buy a collection, I'll be like, wow, I never knew this guy played in that band. And it'll just be like this deep dive in that way, like the discovery is endless. But I think that the way that I'm discovering is just in a different way than on in algorithms.
That's really cool.
I
So
think
what is your,
yeah.
tell us about your record store, if you don't mind.
Well, yeah, it's called Contact Records, and we're in Temescal Alley in Oakland, and we have mostly used records. It's like, a lot of guitar-based music, but mostly guitar-based music. We like a lot of like international guitar-based music, but we also have a lot of soul, a lot of jazz, a lot of, we have hip hop, we have kind of a little of everything. A little bit of electronic, but not that much. But we kind of just have a little bit of everything because we want everyone to be able to find something in our store. And yeah, I just like actually the way I even made that Eurythmics covers EP was that we had bought this collection and we bought a bunch of these like early 4AD 12 inches. And when I was doing the buy and I was picking stuff to buy, I was like, man, there's like something about 12 inches, like they just sound awesome. Like you just hear a song, like that is arguably the best format would be like 12-inch singles. Just like I know they're annoying and cumbersome, but like they just sound so good. And I don't know, I was listening to these Eurythmics B-sides and just being like, this is like it was just hit me really hard. I was like, this is so good. And I just kind of had a moment of discovery with them through that. And I've had so many moments like that. And that's to me more organic than an algorithm. Like, you just like see an album cover and you're like, whoa, what's the deal with that? And like that's why album art matters to me too, because you never know. Someone else might see an image and be like, oh, it's interesting, and like buy an album because they think it looks interesting. And then um, that happens to me all the time.
That's
Um,
really interesting. If I'm
and
ever up in the area, I want to come by and check it
you
out
should,
next time I
yeah,
come by because I wanted to go visit Berkeley sometime soon. I don't know when that'll happen, but some point I'll
yeah,
do that. And I wanted to just kind of finish up with just a thought also and maybe a question. But we talked about AI. I think both of us have a fear of it, as you mentioned, and I'm not comfortable with it. I don't know where it's going to go. I'm sure it'll present some pros and cons as we go along. But I do think that it might make live music more relevant. I think people are going to crave live music. What they hear through their speakers at home, they're not going to know half the time if it was AI made or not, and that's very unfortunate. But live, it's going to take a long time. I mean, they have these robots and these they've already
ugh,
got humanistic, but I just think people are going to crave it. That's just my hope, anyways, is that we will see more people coming out to live shows because they're just losing the human feel in so many other ways. And you can manipulate live music to a certain extent too, but I just feel like that's where it's going to be. I hope more people come out to live shows.
yeah. I think what you're saying is like it's the fear maybe we all have just as things get more augmented. It's like, I have a 7-year-old and it's like, I don't know how to explain to him what's real and what's not. So I just don't want him to ever look at the internet because it's hard to explain. Like, people that are older than me get duped by phishing scams easily because they can't tell the difference between the PayPal logo font. But I can because my specific age, like I can tell to a certain extent, like what's been augmented and what's real. But just like what you're saying, like I think that we really know is what's right in front of us. And this kind of goes back to, full circle at the beginning of our conversation about being in the moment, is that when you're in the moment, that's the only thing that is real. And when you're in the moment in real life, and like, I think that I hope, my hope for the future is that what's real becomes more and more important, and that, anything, we don't have to decipher what's been augmented and what's like false all the time, because I think that's been a real theme of our decade. And yeah, I'm hoping that, it's like also just some weird McCarthy era, stuff going on where it's like, a lot of double speak and stuff, but it's yeah, I would hope that we can focus on what's real and without question.
And let's hope we still have a country and a democracy at some point. We don't know what's really going to happen right now. We're at
Yeah,
a real potential turning point, one way or the other, coming up.
yeah,
So
I
it's a
know.
bit
Our
scary.
planet. Yeah, I know. I know.
Oh,
It's like it's I know personally I've been focusing on local community, like, just people that live around me. Like, how can I lift up and help out people in my direct community? That's kind of where I've been focused. Because it's really like circle of control. Like, it's like, what can I do?
right.
And I think that that's the best any of us can do, really. But yeah, I think I feel all this cautious optimism because I always tend to have that around New Year's. It's like next year's gonna be so great.
Yeah, it can't be any worse than this year as far as
Oh no, don't say that. I feel like I said that right before COVID. I was like, because it was like Trump presidency, and I was like, it can't get any worse than this. And then like
it
global
certainly has,
pandemic.
right? But you know what we'll
Ah,
do? We'll sign off. I'm going to keep you on for a moment to just chat for a moment and say goodbye. But for our audience right now, I just want to recommend you guys go out and get Hannah's new record. And I think you're going to love it because most of you that are watching this probably are fans of her past work, especially Cold Beat. And so it's just I'm really excited to hear your new record and so forth, and appreciate you taking the time. So
thank you
I'll be
so
right
much.
back to chat with you in just another moment once I get this recording to stop here. Oh, here we go.